Fellas, heavyweight is one of the most historical divisions, if not the most historical division across all of combat sports. Multiple different big eras in the heavyweight division leading up to now, and since we've finally got the heavyweight belt on the line this weekend with Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane, I thought we'd do a 32-man heavyweight tournament in the UFC with multiple different heavyweights, from the GOATs of the heavyweight division to the modern best, to the legends, to other big names that I thought we'd stuff in the heavyweight division, put them all together on a spin the wheel to see who goes against who. We'll start off with the first round in the heavyweight tournament. We've got Tom Aspinall versus Randy Couture, one of the all-time greats in Randy Couture versus obviously the modern best heavyweight in Tom Aspinall. Yeah, Aspinall wins this one easy. I mean, it goes without saying, Aspinall obliterates Randy Couture. We're talking about two completely different eras, not even just 2 eras apart, but one of the first eras of the heavyweight division to now. As good as Randy Couture was in his day, you know, the fact that he could always win the belt back even after losing it, and he is one of the greatest of all time, at least in the top 30. I think Aspinall knocks him out pretty easily. Like I said, we're talking about two completely different eras. The modern era is just too far ahead of the era that Randy Couture was in. Aspinall slumps him, and he does it fucking easily as well. And then we've got Junior Dos Santos versus Jailton Almeida. Now, even though I just went on a whole rant about the modern era, we haven't seen enough from Jailton Almeida. I'm going to go with Junior Dos Santos to win this one. Junior Dos Santos was a dangerous striker with an elite takedown defense. This guy on his rise was knocking everybody out. Powerful ass hands, great fight IQ, Junior Dos Santos. Good anti-grappling as well. He beat some great grapplers. He beat some multiple different styles on the rise as well, and even when he won the belt. And obviously, Jailton Almeida, we've not really seen him beat a single elite guy in the modern era of the heavyweight division. He's a great grappler, but he's still untested on the feet. Who knows if he's got, you know, we don't even know if he's a great grappler yet, because the best win on his name is fucking Sergey Spivak. So I think Dos Santos finishes him. We've not seen Almeida against an elite opponent yet. We've not even seen him show his stand-up. He's been finished by Curtis Blades, and he didn't look great in that fight. He just kind of held him against the cage, couldn't get the takedown. So I think Dos Santos finishes Jailton Almeida. Not seen enough from Almeida. Dos Santos is one of the best, so I think Dos Santos finishes Jailton Almeida. Then we have Cain Velasquez versus Shamil Gaziev, two legends of the heavyweight division. This one's a really close fight. I'm going to go with Cain Velasquez. It's a tough one, though. You've got this knockout machine in Shamil Gaziev with great stamina, great gas tank, great grappling, very well-rounded. And that's kind of the same style of Cain Velasquez, a knockout machine with a great gas tank, great grappling, super well-rounded. It's a pretty 50-50 fight, but I'm going to go with Cain Velasquez to win this one. I've got to go with Cain Velasquez. I think he's one of the best heavyweights we've ever seen, one of the toughest matchup stylistically for anyone. And even though Shamil Gaziev on his head could beat any heavyweight, I don't think Velasquez is one of those guys. Cain Velasquez gets the job done over Shamil Gaziev. Close split decision win. Then we've got Alexander Volkov versus DC. Obviously, DC being one of the best heavyweights of all time, and Volkov, I'd say he's probably in his prime, even though he's been in the UFC for ages. I'd say the winning streak, I know he just lost to Gane, but he should have won that fight, and the winning streak that he had before that, I think Volkov's in one of the best career spots, but DC destroys Alexander Volkov. Even current Volkov versus Prime DC destroys him. I mean, we've seen Volkov struggle to grapplers in the past. We saw Curtis Blades shut him down in the main event with the wrestling. We've seen Tom Aspinall land 2 takedowns on in the first round when they fought as well. And you put him against the best wrestler, one of the best wrestlers we've ever had, especially in the heavier divisions in DC. I think he mauls Alexander Volkov. And I think the size of Volkov would only make it easier for DC too. The fact that DC was so short compared to Volkov. I mean, you're talking about a guy, I don't even know how tall DC is. I think he's like 5'10" to 6 foot, and you're talking about Volkov, who's obviously what, 6'9". I think he's 6'7", but he's actually 6'9". Yeah, DC would ragdoll Volkov, takes him down, probably gets a TKO finish, could even knock him out as well, because Volkov does leave his chin hanging, even though I don't know if DC reached it, but yeah, DC mauls Volkov, gets the job done by TKO. Then we've got Mark Hunt versus Sergey Pavlovich. Now, unless it's some sort of Ngannou versus Louis situation, shouldn't make it past the first round. I'm going to go with, it is going to be a tough one though, because you've got, like I said, the KO ability and the great chin of Mark Hunt, and then you've got Sergey Pavlovich, who, even though he might have had a shaky past couple of fights, he's still kind of one of the more dangerous guys we've got in the division in this era. I am going to go with Sergey Pavlovich to beat Mark Hunt. I know there's going to be a few people disagreeing. They're going to, you know, the nostalgia bias, they're going to pick Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt was dangerous as fuck. He was a human highlight reel, and he was probably a lot more, I guess, highlight reel-esque than Sergey Pavlovich, but he wasn't the best in terms of skill, and I think Pavlovich will probably get the job done. I think Pavlovich has got better boxing than Mark Hunt. I see Mark Hunt going very similar to the Derek Lewis fight, or the Tata Vivaza fight that Sergey Pavlovich has, where he shuts them down and finishes them early. And even if he doesn't finish Mark Hunt because of the great chin, I think Pavlovich will still get the job done. He's got better boxing, he's got better output on the feet. He has looked sharp with the boxing in his last 2 fights, despite not getting finishes. Even the grappling as well of Sergey Pavlovich. I think Pavlovich gets the job done, whether it's an early TKO or a decision win. I just think he's more well-rounded. probably more dangerous too. Mark Hunt probably does survive because of the chin that he's got, but I'm going to go with Pavlovich to win this one. John Jones versus Fabricio Verdum as well. I'm going to go with John Jones to win this one. I think he finishes Fabricio Verdum. Fabricio Verdum was a great grappler, but we're talking about John Jones, and even though John Jones in the heavyweight division might not have, looked the most skilled he's ever looked, I still think John Jones, with the amount of styles that he's fought, he would have been able to beat Fabricio Verdum. Great grappler, Fabricio Verdum, great jiu-jitsu, but we're talking about John Jones, who I know we're talking about his light heavyweight career, but this guy has fought every style you could possibly think of. Strikers, grapplers, well-rounded guys, small guys, big guys, heavyweights. He's beaten every style you can think of. So I think John Jones would have broken him down on the feet, taken the fight to the mat, avoided any jiu-jitsu or submission threat from Fabricio Verdum, damaged him on the feet with ground and pound, probably got some sort of a late TKO finish, and he's got great takedown defense as well, does John Jones. We saw it in the DC fight, we saw it in the light heavyweight division, great takedown defense and wrestling himself. So as good as Verdum was, Jones breaks him, he gets some sort of TKO, probably in the middle to the later on in the fight. So I'm going to go Jones by TKO. Alex Pereira versus Francis Ngannou might possibly be the most powerful fight he could possibly make in the UFC. Obviously, Poton's a light heavyweight, but he's pretty much a heavyweight. I hope he does move to heavyweight soon. Yeah, one of the most powerful fights you can make. You've got Alex Pereira, who might be the hardest hitting guy in the modern era, currently in the UFC, against Francis Ngannou, who's the most hard-hitting guy we've ever had in the fucking sport. So power's going off the rails, but yeah, I'm going to go with Ngannou to win this one. He's a natural heavyweight. I know Alex is probably a natural heavyweight too, but Ngannou, if we're talking about 2020 Ngannou, he's simply way too big for Alex, and it's the wrestling as well. Ngannou kind of developed wrestling in the late end of his heavyweight career. We saw it in the fight with Cyril Gane. Even though Gane's not a great grappler, he was able to take down Gane for a lot of the fight and kind of ragdoll him with the wrestling. We saw it even in PFL in his most recent fight, the way that he easily took down and smashed head for head to pieces. So I'm probably going to pick Ngannou to beat him with the wrestling, and even on the feet as well. I think Ngannou, like I said, he's just too big for Alex. The power as well of Ngannou, even though they're both powerful. I think probably Poton's the most slick striker out of the two of them. I'll give him that. But moving up to the heavyweight division, I just think the size, the power, obviously the wrestling as well of Ngannou would have been too much. I'd probably go Ngannou by some sort of decision or some sort of TKO with ground and pound over Alex. And then we've got Kevin Randleman versus Derek Lewis. It's a weird ass fantasy fight. This is the kind of a fight I want to see because you've got Derek Lewis, just this punching fucking machine of the modern era with KO ability, arguably the most hard hitting guy in the UFC now. And Kevin Randleman was obviously on roids, but he was an athletic freak in his prime. But yeah, I'm going to go with Derek Lewis to knock out Kevin Randleman. Yeah, Randleman was an athletic freak, but he would get chinned. We've seen Kevin Randleman, even though he fought in one of the first eras of the UFC and back in Pride, he got chinned a lot. And I think you put him against the most powerful guy in the modern era in Derek Lewis, he's going to find the chin of Randleman and he'd knock him out. He's not getting taken down. I think even from a skills perspective, Derek Lewis is better than Randleman too. He'd slump him. Derek Lewis by a brutal KO. He'd knock out Kevin Randleman. Then we've got Alexander Karelin versus Fedor Emelianenko. Two Russian beasts. Now, Karelin is one of the greatest wrestlers, if not the greatest wrestler of all time. In his heyday, he's one of the best kind of heavyweight wrestlers. Obviously, he only had one MMA fight. It wasn't like a big MMA fight or anything, but I'm going to include him because of how dominant of a wrestler he was. And put him in against Fedor. Bit of an unfortunate debut in the tournament because he's going to get smashed to pieces by Fedor. Yeah, Fedor would knock him out. I mean, as much as I want to hype up Karelin's wrestling, you put him against Fedor, the greatest heavyweight of all time, the most well-rounded heavyweight of all time. He's knocking out Karelin on the feet. MMA versus wrestling. Fedor would absolutely obliterate him. As good as Karelin was in wrestling, different sport, and you're facing the best. Fedor destroys him. Then we've got Anthony Johnson versus Curtis Blades. I'm going to go with Anthony Johnson to win this one over Curtis Blades. Curtis Blades historically struggles with powerful guys, you know? The Francis Ngannou fight, he got knocked out by Ngannou. The fight with Derek Lewis, he got knocked out by Derek Lewis. He got finished by Sergey Pavlovich. He got knocked out by Tom Aspinall. The kryptonite of Curtis Blades is guys who hit hard, and you put him against one of those powerful guys in Anthony Rumble Johnson. Obviously, kind of floated between multiple different divisions, but he was around the heavier divisions as well, so Rumble Johnson versus Curtis Blades. Rumble Johnson, I think all it takes is one from Johnson, and he's knocking out Curtis Blades. I think he slumps Curtis Blades out cold. I'm going to go Rumble Johnson by KO. Mirko Cro Cop versus Mark Coleman. Obviously, Mark Coleman, one of the OG BMFs of the UFC, one of the first heavyweights we've ever had. I'm going to go with Mirko Cro Cop to beat Mark Coleman. Yeah, Mark Coleman's a legend, but he's just not skilled enough for future generations. I mean, like I said, when we're talking about the first generation of UFC heavyweight, they get smashed to pieces by most. I mean, to be fair, he could probably beat Marcin Tybura, but most kind of, any kind of decent heavyweight of any other era after that is losing. And Mirko Cro Cop, I mean, we've seen this fight before. Mirko Cro Cop finished him as well. So I think Cro Cop would have got the job done. Like I said, we've seen it, but even if we hadn't seen the fight, I just think stylistically Cro Cop's way better. We saw him in his prime, one of the best kickers we've had in the heavyweight division, one of the most dangerous strikers we've had in the heavyweight division. So I think Mirko Cro Cop, he'd knock out Mark Coleman. I mean, he has before, so I think prime for prime, Cro Cop takes the cake. And then we've got Andrei Arlovski versus Cyril Gane. Now, even if we talk about prime Andrei Arlovski, again, it goes back to the whole debate of different eras. Cyril Gane finishes Andrei Arlovski. It's a simple case of the sport evolving. Arlovski was tough. He got caught quite a bit in his prime. I don't think he gets, to be fair, I think he probably does make it to a decision with Cyril Gane if it is a, 5-rounder, because even though we have seen Arlovski get chinned a few times, Cyril Gane's not really a power puncher, but we're talking about a new breed guy in the heavyweight division. Probably one of the most athletic, light on his feet heavyweights I've ever seen. Dynamic ass striker. Not the most well-rounded guy, but Cyril Gane, he's always been the best, one of the best in the modern era. You put him against prime Arlovski, I'm going to go Cyril Gane by some sort of decision victory or some sort of late TKO. But yeah, just simply more skilled, more athletic, more modern. Cyril Gane gets the job done. Wanderlei Silva versus Stipe Miocic if Wanderlei was to move up. Now, I'm so tempted to pick Wanderlei Silva to win this prime because when he was full of fucking juice in Pride FC, one of the scariest guys we've seen, but I'm going to go with Stipe to win this one. I'm going to play it safe and pick Stipe to beat Wanderlei. Yeah, Wanderlei was a fucking beast in Pride FC, and it would be a tough fight because they're both these heavy boxers, heavy-handed boxers, but I'm going to go with Stipe. I just think Stipe is more rounded, and I think from a case of skill as well, he's a better pure boxer than Wanderlei Silva. I can see a world where Wanderlei kind of clips Stipe and knocks him out, but Stipe was a big guy. He had better wrestling than Wanderlei Silva, better pure boxing, also hit hard too, so I think everything taken into account, I'm going to lean towards Stipe beating Wanderlei, but it would have been a sick fucking fight. And I do think, like I said, Wanderlei could have been one of those guys to just land a massive shot and shin Stipe. But I'm going to go Stipe. Probably gets a TKO over Wanderlei Silva in the later rounds after Wanderlei gasses out. And then we've got Antonio Nogueira versus Alistair Overeem. Or so let's say Ubrim as well, if we're talking about prime Ubrim. Yeah, I'm going to go with Nogueira. We've seen this fight before, even though there was injuries involved, over him getting injured coming into the fight. Nogueira still beat him, and he did it pretty comfortably as well. We've seen this fight before. Nogueira looked good in the feet. Very well-rounded guy was Nogueira. Good grappling, good striking. But yeah, he looked good in the Overeem fight. He finished him as well. So because of the first fight that we've seen, and even though you can argue that Overeem wasn't in his prime then, he wasn't full of roids, I'm still picking Nogueira to win this one. Nogueira by TKO. Then we had Yuri Prohaska versus Lesnar. Now, obviously, Yuri's a light heavyweight, but he's one of the most entertaining light heavyweights of the modern era. So I'm going to bump it up to the heavyweight tournament. And against Brock Lesnar, one of the biggest names in heavyweight history, I'm going to go with Yuri to beat Brock Lesnar. I mean, Brock Lesnar can't take pain. He's one of these guys in MMA, kind of like Bo Nickel. Great wrestler, cannot take a big shot. And you talk about Yuri, one of the most brutal, dishing out pain type of guys. Yeah, I think Brock would get smashed to pieces. I think Yuri, even though he'd be undersized against Lesnar, he'd absolutely break him apart. The gas tank of Yuri, the fact that he gets more dangerous as the fight goes on, the fact that Lesnar has no pain tolerance, Yuri would have completely broken him down as the fight went on and got some sort of TKO finish. Or yeah, I think Yuri would have fucked him up. I think after he probably wouldn't have gone the distance, but after the fight, it would have been one of those cases where Yuri, we might have dealt some adversity early on, but Lesnar comes out of the fight looking bludgeoned, bruised, probably taps due to taps and gets a TKO loss. Yuri, I think he smashes Lesnar to pieces, if I'm being honest. And then we've got Vadim Nemkov versus Rico Verhoeven, the PFL champion, one of the best PFL fighters in the modern era. In Vadim Nemkov versus the greatest kickboxer in the modern era, in Rico Verhoeven. It's a similar case of Alexander Karolin. I want to pick Rico Verhoeven, but I've got to go with Vadim Nemkov to win this one. Rico, one of the greatest kickboxers in the modern era, especially in the heavy divisions. He's dominated kickboxing. He's definitely the best in the heavy divisions, but I just think it's a case of not being well-rounded enough. Vadim Nemkov's one of the best in PFL. I think he's got a record of like 21-2. So I'm going to go with Vadim Nemkov. Probably takes the fight to the mat, pulls off some sort of submission or TKO finish. We've seen him get a couple of subs in PFL before as well, so I'm going to go Vadim Nemkov to finish Rico Verhoeven. And then we've got round 2 of the tournament. Kicking off round 2, we've got Tom Aspinall versus Junior Dos Santos. This will be a tough fight as well. I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall to beat Junior Dos Santos by KO. I just think Tom Aspinall's different, man. It's another case of Junior Dos Santos being the best in, or one of the best in his era, but Tom Aspinall being that different evolution of a heavyweight. Tom Aspinall, it is a tough fight, like I said. They're both KO punches. They both hit hard, but I just think Tom Aspinall would have done it. He's quicker. He's one of the quickest, if not the quickest heavyweight we've ever seen. He's got some of the best in and out movement, one of the best boxers we've seen in the heavyweight division. I think he's a little bit more well-rounded as well than Junior Dos Santos, so I would have picked Tom Aspinall to beat Junior Dos Santos by some sort of early finish, but it's similar to the Pavlovich fight. It's either you or him. It ain't going the distance, and Dos Santos was a beast in his prime. You put him against the best in the modern era. I think Tom Aspinall finishes Dos Santos. Probably does about some sort of early KO. I'm going to go Aspinall by KO early on. And then we've got Cain Velasquez versus DC. I guess it's a bit of a fantasy fight, even though obviously we would have never seen them fight each other because... I mean, DC said that Cain Velasquez is the tougher guy that has ever sparred, and he can't beat Cain Velasquez, and they were obviously training partners as well for a long time, which was a bit frustrating when they could have been matched up against each other, but obviously massive training partners. I'm going to go with Cain Velasquez to win this one, and I'm not just saying this because of what DC said. It is a super tough fight to pick, but I just think I think Velasquez was a monster in his prime. You know, might have not been the biggest guy in the heavyweight division, but his gas tank, his mauling grappling pace, his KO ability on the feet, I think stylistically, he would have been a nasty fight for DC. I don't see DC mauling him in the wrestling. I think that the striking threat of Cain Velasquez, the fact that he's so durable as well, it would have been a little bit too much for DC. DC said he sparred Velasquez, the toughest guys ever had to spar. Would have been a tough fight to pick. I'm probably going to lead towards Cain Velasquez by some sort of a late TKO, because in his prime, he was one of the most dangerous and one of the most gut-wrenching fighters you could have possibly faced. And then we've got Sergey Pavlovich versus John Jones, a fight that was kind of hyped up in 2023 before he got knocked out by Tom Aspinall. Hypothetically, looking back at this fight, I'm going to go with John Jones to finish Sergey Pavlovich. Yeah, I mean, we obviously saw Pavlovich get knocked out by Tom Aspinall. And I'm not saying he get knocked out by John Jones, but we also saw him get dominated by Volkov straight after that, which kind of took my confidence out of Pavlovich ever going into a John Jones fight. So, yeah, even though you can say stylistically Pavlovich is a nightmare matchup, I'm going to go with Jones to win. Probably either picks him apart on the feet. You know, I can see him getting in the clinch with Pavlovich and roughing him up in the clinch, taking him down, doing a lot of damage on the ground, especially heavyweight John Jones. He would have figured out a way to win, as he does with everyone. And we've seen Pavlovich get beat twice, and we've seen him look a lot more vulnerable now compared to when he was on the winning streak. So I'm going to go John Jones, probably get some sort of submission or TKO in the middle of the fight. And then we've got Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis. Now, obviously, we've seen this fight before, but I'm going to go with Francis Ngannou to win. Yes, we've seen this fight before. It was one of those boring fights ever, and Derek Lewis got the win. But I think if you talk about Prime Ngannou, which was the one that fought Stipe Miocic in 2020 versus Prime Derek Lewis, I think Ngannou started him. I believe the Ngannou that fought Stipe Miocic in 2020, the Prime Ngannou, he would have been able to knock out. Derek Lewis. I mean, we're talking about a Lewis that got knocked out by Tuivasa around that area against Francis Ngannou, who, like I said, was one of the most dangerous heavyweights we've ever seen in that fight with Stipe. So even though we've seen it before, it was boring. I think Prime for Prime, Ngannou probably knocks out Derek Lewis, gets the job done. Just too well-rounded, and I think he's just a better pure skilled guy. But again, it could have just been the same as the first. Not one of the most boring heavyweight fights we've ever had to witness. Fedor Emelianenko versus Anthony Rumble Johnson. Again, another fight that you look at and you know it's not going the distance. But yeah, I'm going to go with Fedor to win this one. He'd ragdoll him. Fedor would absolutely play with Rumble Johnson on the ground. He'd take him down. He'd maul him. He'd get a submission. Fedor was even undersized a lot of the time against a lot of heavyweights. But elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, elite wrestling, elite grappling. He would have taken down Anthony Rumble Johnson, who we've seen struggle with wrestling before, and he would have subbed him early on. Fedor probably makes this fight look easy. Mirko Cro Cop versus Cyril Gane. A bit of a kind of fantasy fight in the heavyweight division. I'm going to go with Cyril Gane to beat Mirko Cro Cop. I can already hear the button smashing from all the nostalgia fans. But yeah, it's just, again, another similar case of errors being different. And it is kind of a passing of the torch moment where I think Cyril Gane's just a little bit more technical than Mirko Cro Cop, a little bit more athletic, a little bit more skilled than Mirko Cro Cop. And again, it is just a case of him being in the modern era. I'm not saying Cyril Gane's necessarily facing a better opponent, a better quality opponent than Mirko Cro Cop, because again, the heavyweight era in terms of like quality of opponents in the division, if anything, it might have got worse. But I just think Cyril Gane is this new breed heavyweight. He probably would have been able to pick apart Mirko Cro Cop. It would have been a close fight, but I'm going to go with Cyril Gane by decision. Great kickboxing match. I lean towards Cyril Gane. A little bit more technical, a little bit more skilled, a little bit more athletic. Gets the job done. And then we've got Stipe Miocic versus Nogueira. I'm going to go with Stipe to win this one. Yeah, Stipe just keeps the fight standing and probably outboxes him. Stipe, I think he had way better boxing than Nogueira, and I could just see him completely boxing the head off Nogueira, keeping the fight standing, picking him apart. Stipe had a pretty solid takedown defense. I mean, he was an offensive wrestler for a lot of his career as well with Stipe, so he keeps the fight standing. And yeah, I think he either rides out a decision or gets some sort of late TKO, finishes Nogueira on the feet, or rides out to a decision, but keeps the fight standing and outboxes him. And then we've got Yuri Prohaska versus Vadim Nemkov. Now, I'm going to go with Yuri because we have actually seen this fight before. We saw this back a couple of years back in Pride, not in Pride, was it Ryzen? Yuri got the TKO finish. Obviously, you can argue with it. They ain't in their prime. They've both evolved since then. But I think Yuri's evolved more, if anything. And we saw this fight. Yuri looked good with the grappling, which isn't what I expected. We saw him look really good with the grappling against Vadim Nemkov in this fight. Take the fight to the ground, look good in the grappling. Obviously, picked them apart on the feet as well. And he obviously got the finish, the TKO finish over Vadim Nemkov too. So I'd assume that he'd do the same. If anything, it'll probably be a bit more brutal because I think even though they've both developed, I think Yuri's developed more than Nemkov. Yuri gets a TKO finish. Then we've got round 3 of the heavyweight tournament. Tom Aspinall versus Cain Velasquez. This is like one of those fights where there is no right or wrong answer. You're going to get, I mean, there isn't a wrong answer regardless. If you say Tom Aspinall, you're going to get called out for recency bias. You pick Velasquez, you're going to get called out for nostalgia bias. I can already read the comments. It's a tough one to pick because you have got Cain Velasquez, who, like I said, was one of the most gut-wrenching tough heavyweights for anybody on the planet. We've never seen Aspinall ever face anyone who could even drag him into deep waters like Velasquez has. And then we're talking about Aspinall, who has looked unstoppable compared to the modern era of the heavyweights, but he's still a bit of a puzzle that we've not really solved yet. I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall to win this one. There is no right or wrong answer, but I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall. My heart is telling me that Tom Aspinall gets the job done over Velasquez. I think he knocks him out. I think the size of Tom Aspinall, you've got to remember this guy's massive for the heavyweight division. He'd tower over Cain Velasquez. He's got probably sharper boxing, quicker boxing, better striking. More, even though Velasquez obviously hit hard as well, more dangerous on the feet. And the only argument you can really make for Cain is that once it gets past the first round, Aspinall's a fish out of water. But what's to say that Aspinall has bad stamina? Just because he's never made it out the first round, that doesn't necessarily mean he's got bad stamina. It just means we haven't seen it. So Velasquez definitely would have been the most tough fight he would have ever had on stylistically on paper. But I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall by knockout. There is no right or wrong answer. I'm leaning towards the best of the modern era, who's far ahead of everyone else to beat Cain Velasquez. And then we've got Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones, one of the most biggest fantasy fights we've had in the modern era, which never took place. I'm going Ngannou to beat Jon Jones. I think heavyweight, if this would have taken place a few years back, Ngannou would have smoked him. Yeah, Ngannou, I think his takedown defense and his grappling developed like massively towards the end of his heavyweight career. I don't think Jones would have dominated in the same way he did with Stipe and Cyril Gane, even though he probably would have had success with the grappling. I think Ngannou's takedown defense would have kept the fight standing. And I think he knocks the fuck out of Jon Jones on the feet. Jones looked shit against Stipe Miocic on the feet. I'm going to be honest. He was getting caught a lot by Stipe Miocic. He's never really been the best defensive boxer as well. It's a bit of a stylistic nightmare for Jones. This big guy, way bigger than John, who had KO power's an understatement. Obviously the hardest hitting guy ever. Good boxing as well. Better boxing than Jones. Better stand up than Jones. Good takedown defense. Physical specimen. Athletic specimen. And Ngannou would have knocked out Jon Jones, in my opinion, had they fought back in 2020, which is a reason why Jon Jones ducked him, or back in 2023, whatever. But yeah, Ngannou would have finished Jon Jones. And then we've got Fedor Emelianenko versus Cyril Gane. I mean, this is a coffin baby versus hydrogen bomb. Fedor makes it look easy. Yeah, Cyril Gane, his biggest flaw has been grappling. We've saw it in the fight with Francis Ngannou when Ngannou took him down. We saw it in the fight with Jones. Jones made it easy working with the grappling. We're going to see it this weekend as well when Tom Aspinall submits Cyril Gane. You put him against Fedor, like I said before, historically one of the best grapplers at heavyweight. Super good wrestling, super good jiu-jitsu and submission ability. Great pure grappler. He'd have taken Cyril Gane down and done the exact same of what Jon Jones did. Fedor gets the job done. And then we've got Stipe Miocic versus Jiri Prochazka. Now, the one thing's for certain, this would have been a bloody good fight. Jiri and Stipe, both bangers. Obviously, Stipe Miocic, heavy boxing approach, never really in a boring fight. Jiri, never in a boring fight at all. Heavy striking approach. This would have been such a treat to watch on the feet. I'm actually going to go with Jiri to win this one. I'm going to go with, I guess it's a bit of a hot take. I'm going to go with Jiri Prochazka, prime for prime, to beat Stipe Miocic. I think Jiri's that damn good. We've seen Stipe get caught a lot on the feet. Obviously, I'm not just going to call this because he got knocked out by Ngannou by DC, but he got caught a lot on the feet, and I think Jiri's a bit underrated in the light heavyweight division. Even though he's obviously one of the most entertaining guys, I think he's underrated in the sense that he doesn't get as much respect as he deserves. His only losses in the past couple of years have been to Alex. His only losses in the UFC have been to Alex. He's the most dangerous striker of this generation. And apart from that, he's ran through everybody. He hasn't had a single decision in the last 10 years. Dangerous ass striker. A lot quicker than Stipe as well. Both have great head movement, both pack a punch, but I think Jiri would have got the job done. I think he would have gone into the later rounds. And I can see Stipe wearing a lot of damage and Jiri just picking them apart. It would have been a tough fight for Jiri. It would have been, because if we compare it to, let's say, Khalil Roundtree, Stipe's got more power than Roundtree, probably better defensively as well, better gas tank, better wrestling too, but I'm going to go Jiri. I think the guy's too crafty for a guy like Stipe, which Stipe would have never seen in the heavyweight division, anybody like Jiri before. So I'm going to go with Jiri to win this one. His only losses to Alex, if you take away the Alex losses, Jiri's one of the best of this generation, so Jiri gets the job done, I think, against Stipe Miocic, even though it's obviously not a confident pick. And then we've got round 4, Tom Aspinall versus Francis Ngannou, probably one of the most 50-50 fantasy fights you can make. You know it's going to be a knockout in the first round. Aspinall, quick, rapid boxer who hits you before you can even figure it out. Ngannou, the most powerful man we've ever seen in the heavyweight division with God-given KO power. Now, if I pick Aspinall, I'm going to get a rampage of comments, call me an Aspinall glazer. So you know what? It is a 50-50 fight. For the sake of this, I'm going to go with Francis Ngannou to win. And I'm not just saying that because of that. But I'm going to go with Francis Ngannou to win because I think stylistically, he is a nightmare matchup for Tom Aspinall. We've seen Aspinall get clipped a lot on the feet. Sergey Pavlovich caught him clean. Blades caught him a few times. Even Volkov was able to catch him a few times as well. Orlovsky too. Aspinall does leave his chin up in the air. As good as his chin looked against Sergey Pavlovich, you can't do that against Francis Ngannou. Why I think you put him against the Ngannou that fought Stipe back in 2021, whenever it was, I think he'd have knocked out Tom Aspinall. Just because of how powerful Ngannou is and the fact that Aspinall does leave his chin up in the air. The grappling side of things, I don't see Aspinall really having great success with the grappling. I think he is a better pure BJJ guy than Ngannou, but like I said, Ngannou's takedown defense improved rapidly towards the end of his career, and it's not a confident pick as well. I can see Aspinall beating Ngannou. I can see Ngannou beating Aspinall. I'm going to lean towards Ngannou winning this one so I don't get a rush of comments calling me an Aspinall glazer, but yeah, it's a 50-50 fight. I lean towards Ngannou. I can definitely see him catching Aspinall. So prime for prime, I'm slightly leaning towards Ngannou because we've still yet to kind of see Aspinall against an elite heavyweight. Like, we've seen him beat Volkov and Blades and whatever. We'll have to see how it is against Cyril Gane, but I'm going to go with Ngannou to win this one for now. Anyway, next fight, Fedor Emelianenko versus Yuri. Yeah, Fedor wins this one. He takes the fight to the mat and gets a TKO finish over Yuri. Different ball game. Fedor finishes Yuri. Not going to spend too long. Yuri would have got caught on the feet and he would have got taken down and finished by Fedor. Easy as pie. And then we've got round 5, Fedor versus Ngannou. I'm going to go with Fedor to win this one over Francis Ngannou. Prime for prime. Yeah, I'm going to go with Fedor to win this one. Ngannou, if we're talking about prime Ngannou, the one that fought Stipe back in 2020, he would have had success with the wrestling, but I don't know if he'd have had a success against a guy like Fedor Emelianenko. I know I keep glazing his grappling, whatever. Fedor's wrestling was that damn good. The guy's grappling was that damn good. And the fact that he could mix the striking it with the grappling so well. He fought big guys. He fought smaller guys. He would have been undersized against Ngannou, but I think he would have taken the fight to the mat, wore out Ngannou, gassed him out. Because we've seen Ngannou gas out before. We saw it in the first Stipe fight. And I think in the later rounds, Fedor would have taken him down and got some sort of submission. But I don't think it's a super confident pick. I'm not just trying to, I'm not trying to overhype Fedor here. I don't think it's not a super confident pick. I do think Ngannou would have been a fucking difficult test for Fedor, but I can see going to the later rounds. Fedor wears the early storm, gasses out Ngannou, takes him down, and gets some sort of submission later on. I just think Fedor, he's won the tournament. Not really a surprise. He is the greatest heavyweight of all time. So I think Fedor comes out on top. But that is my heavyweight tournament, how I think every match would have gone. Let me know if you, let me know if I should have included any more heavyweights, what you thought on the matchups, if you agree with the matchups that I chose. Let me know your thoughts.